Hello, I'm Jonathan, also known as the PC Genie, and this is what we're going to be looking at today. This is one of the Regenyei Federschwerts, Federschwert meaning feather sword, translated from German. So it's got its typical maker's mark, as you'll see here. So the common sort of features you can expect on this sort of Federschwert mean that it's got this sort of, I'd say almost rectangular section blade. So it has this, and then you have this, which is called a schild, which there are debates over the exact purpose of this, but historical examples of these training swords had this, so people are copying that and doing it as well. Typical crossguard because it's simulating a long sword, you know, two-handed sword, but not a large one like the Zweihander, Montante, those, you know, Spadoni, those sorts of things that are, you know, really large, sort of end up about 6 feet tall or so. These are more nimble, quick cutting, two-handed swords that can be useful in the cut and the thrust being simulated. Another feature you get is some sort of safe tip, in this case a rolled tip, more on that in a minute, and just your usual grip and pommel as you'd expect on a sword. So, in terms of the specific details, I say it has more of a rectangular section of blade usually. In this example, on the Regenyei sword, it actually tapers ever so slightly. So it starts here, if you ignore the schild and beyond. This is its widest point, and then actually tapers down through to the tip until it's actually, quite narrow. Now I have seen some examples of Federschwerts where it actually doesn't do that. They still have this, which is a good flex temper, so you can see as I hit it and as it would hit a target, it does this sort of wobbling around. And it's a bit similar to what we might see on a sport fencing épée or similar blade. So it's got that flex, and then when you stab into something, it does this bending, rather than staying stiff and puncturing through like an actual deadly sword. What makes it particularly interesting of this one is, because of that tapering, it does bend more towards the tip. So it doesn't bend so much that it snaps, or bend so much that it takes a set, like some swords do, and at the same time it's not stiff, so that it's ending up, like I say, being dangerous and puncturing through. So it's quite a good design choice, in my opinion, to have it broader and therefore a bit stiffer towards the handle, so it's not wobbling around too much, and yet have more bend and flex towards the tip. A similar comparison would be if you look at, say, an English longbow. That has a round stave section which gradually tapers from the handle up to the tips, so that it bends more as it goes further out. So with this, besides that, we have a forged crossguard. So this is hand forged. A lot of it I think is stock removal and heat treatment, but here you will see this crossguard has been hand forged by Regenyei. If you're getting a custom longsword or even custom other sword from him, it should be noted that you can sometimes get ones that are more machine done, and they're perfectly fine, don't get me wrong, they've got nice aesthetics to them. But if you want something that's got that sort of organic hand forged look, or just like this type of cosmetic appearance, they are available on several of his swords, whether you're getting one that's custom made, whether you're getting one that's from the design patterns on his website, depending on which particular one you choose. Besides that, we've got here standard scent bottle pommel. This is just one of the typical designs. Longswords can have wheel pommel if it's really rare. Things like this sort of scent bottle pommel. Sometimes you get ones that have more of a diamond or, you know, hexagonal cross section rather than this rounded section. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, this gives you a better idea of what it looks like new. Nice, what's the word? Satin polish, that's the word. Not quite a mirror polish, but a good polish nonetheless. The only reason it's rusted so much around here is because I do a lot of Fiore style fighting, and I prefer to have my hand actually on the pommel for extra leverage, as you can see, as opposed to having it on the bottom of the handle. Besides that, it features a rolled tip. Now, to go into more detail on this, I have seen a few different types of tips that you get. Sometimes you just got it rounded over, just blunt. Sometimes you get it with a rubber tip. Sometimes you get ones that have a spent brass cartridge, like out of a rifle over it. Or, like in this example, you see a rolled tip. Now, to those of you who don't know, in HEMA tournaments, the usual rules are that your sort of blunt tips, you know, the standard just round ones, and the rubber tips are actually not allowed because it's too dangerous. Typically they end up potentially acting as quite sharp blades, and with the rubber tip especially so, because the rubber tip tends to wear away. One of two things will happen. Either it will be too loose, in which case the tip will pop off and the blade that you've got underneath can actually be quite surprisingly sharp and therefore dangerous in sparring or in a tournament context. Or alternatively, it wears through and then it's having a situation where the blade goes through the rubber tip and then through the person, because the rubber tip has already worn away by that point to being almost non-existent. So remember, if you are going into that sort of tournament or something competitive, rolled tips like this, or a spent brass cartridge over the end of it, compressed down. Besides that, in terms of the Rockwell Hardness, I did test this with a particular file set that I got for my birthday. This is in the mid-50s range, I do believe. I can't remember the exact amount. I'll probably, if I remember to, I'll put it on the screen here somewhere. If not, oh dear. And besides that, when I was buying it, bearing in mind this isn't one that was one of the standard selections, this was at Fight Camp. So he had a variety of items that he doesn't normally make, such as a Chinese dao, this strange almost, I don't even know what it was, something that had a bit of a back curved blade, but not quite long enough to be a sort of proper saber. Strange items like that, Chinese dao I said, other swords like that. So this probably isn't going to match any of the standard patterns, but it'll still give a rough idea of what to expect on Regenyei's longswords. This particular example is one that I bought specially, apart from the fact that it's got a perfectly long blade, which is good for the reach and leverage and all the rest. Of course the rolled tip, like I said, that he gets on most of the swords. But most especially, it has a particularly long grip. So you sometimes get an extra inch or two shorter. So they're perfectly fine. They'll give you a nice, quick and nimble sword for your cuts and your thrusts, and it's not going to sort of get in the way of you or be easier for an opponent to grab and manipulate. But I personally prefer longer handles because, being a shorter person myself, I do occasionally compensate for that by feinting distance. Because there's what's called a feint, which is often used to mean a pretend attack, but you can actually pretend to do other things, like pretending to be out of range. So let's say I'm here, I can't swing like that in a normal way and hit you where the camera is, but I could go into one hand, letting go of my right hand, and then extend out for something like a leg cut, or even I could thrust, and I'm actually going past the camera now. Here we are, a bit closer, so gives me the extra reach, and having a longer handle allows me to do tricks like that easier. And also, like I said, as a Fiorist who uses the entire length of the handle, more handle means more leverage, so it just feels easier to me personally. So that's not something that makes the weapon better or worse, it just makes it more suitable to me personally. So yes, overall, I have tested it in some sparring. I've let other people borrow it for quite hard sparring. I've only just obtained some gauntlets, the Spez Heavies, that allow me to do proper full contact sparring with steels, so I'll get a chance to practice that. But everything I've seen so far is very good, There are some very slight cosmetic marks and dings from, you know, actual full force sword swings against each other and hard parries, but apart from these tiny sort of nicks and things, I mean, I can run my hand all the way up and down and I'm not even getting any rough edges. It's, you know, that it's just the tiniest deformation that would take literally thousands of hits, or at least several around the same spot, to have any noticeable effect. So it's certainly a very durable blade, and I've seen much worse, you know, ones that start, you know, with hard parries or attacking into someone's bind, and it just, you know, you get dents all over the place until you end up with saw teeth. You know, it's a really horrible blade, and you actually have to take it back to the workshop and get a belt sander or sandpaper or some other abrasive and basically get all of those burrs out, or otherwise you're scratching up armour or actually cutting people open because of the fact that it becomes like a saw blade. In this example, it doesn't seem to do that at all, so I'm very proud of it actually. It's one of my favourite swords. So overall, I do recommend Regenyei and his swords. The only problem is, in making a sword, it is a bit of a while to obtain them. So that's why it's good when I went to fight camp, because, you know, I'd gone to the event, saw the blade, said I'll buy it, and then paid the money, which is how you'd want things ideally. Whereas when you're ordering them from him, it's like I've got an order now because I really do like his swords. I've got a sabre that I want, a steel sabre, which I've got on order, and also a particular longsword which isn't tournament suitable like this Federschwert, but it's more of a historical fighting longsword shape while still being fairly safe for drills and lighter sparring. So I've got those two swords in order, and me and the rest of my group, the Iron Door Collective, had all ordered these, you know, and other swords, and we ordered them back in February. It is now November at the time of making this video, and they've only just been made. And we need to pay for them and get them delivered and whatnot. So just bear that in mind. It's a risk-reward thing in the fact that they're very good value for money. It's like this one was a couple of £100, and that's a really good price for such a high-quality sword that's been tempered beautifully, hand-forged crossguard, lovely grip that's all secure. There's nothing, even on a longsword where you've got this flex temper and the tang that goes all the way through, you often hear rattling, you know, because there's so much length and it's wobbling around, and yet you hear more jingling on these chainmail cosmetic gloves than you do rattling on the sword. So that just shows how sturdily they're constructed as well. Like I say, it's a situation where if you're prepared to wait potentially a year or so for your swords, I'd say it's worth it, because it's good quality, so you can keep using them for years. It's like my arming sword I reviewed a very long time ago. I'm still using it now. It's a fantastic quality sword. This one I'm going to be using for years. They're going to last. I know they'll continue to be safe for sparring, even full contact. They'll be great for drills, demonstrations to the general public, all sorts of things. And the price is great value for money. I've seen similar quality swords at much higher prices, or similarly priced swords that are much lower quality, such as the Handway ones. So overall, I'd say if you're a patient person, buy them. They're just great. Like I said, you know, I could probably nitpick with faults, but I'd really have to be nitpicking. So yeah, if you do have the opportunity to obtain some, I'd strongly recommend you do. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time. Ta-ra. So here we are, in my room. It's all the usual things, you know, knives, swords, that sort of stuff, but here, if I'd like to draw your attention to, it's a box. Now I'll give you 5 seconds to guess what wood it's made from, and it's going to be an unusual one. 4, 3, 2, 1. That's actually made of yew. It's surprising. I've seen ones made of oak, teak, mahogany, funny, exotic things, including chipboard. And yeah, it's lovely. All together with glue on. I haven't seen any nails around, and it's got a nice red sort of, not velvet, felt inside. And I mean, it's been in my room for 5 minutes. Let's have a look inside the empty box. Oh my god, there are knives inside already. God, I suppose it has sat in my room for 5 minutes. But yes, on a serious note, I like it. So this is the knife box. I mean, certainly a good addition to my room because I'm running out of room in here. Too many knives. And that's just for usual showering and whatnot stuff. And materials and things. And of course a whole rack full of blades. Running out of space, so a knife box is good.